The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Reagan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two fantastic co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we are rejoining The Short Game's coverage of IFComp 2023. Whenever I talk about that, I always feel a little bit like I'm like we're rejoining our coverage of the F1 race in wherever they hold those or something, like coming back from a commercial break.
Perfect metaphor.
Yes.
This marathon has been going on for 1 month, and we're just checking in periodically.
Yes. But we are just going to talk about a few more games that we happen to have checked out as we approach the midpoint, I guess. I'm honestly looking at the calendar because we're more towards the end than the midpoint, but we're getting on through the comp. And we played a few more games, and we're going to talk about them. And we'll plan on probably doing one additional IFComp episode during the comp this year. It'll either be right before or right after the end of the comp, where we'll talk about a few more games and potentially talk about the conclusions and voting. So if you're looking at your clock or calendar, keep in mind that the voting on IFComp 2023 ends on November 15th. If you're trying to get your votes in, you just need to play 5 games max, not max, total at minimum. Minimum is the right.
Minimum, the opposite of max.
Opposite of maximum. Minimum 5 games, and that's easy. A lot of these games will take you 4 minutes. Just check out 5 games at minimum and give your thoughts in the form of a numeric rating. You don't have to leave other comments, although you can. And then your votes will be counted. And the best thing to do is to rate them in the ballot page as you play them so that you don't forget, because that's been me. I've been like, I'll enter all of my thoughts at the end once I've fully figured it out. And then you don't. And so remember, put them in as you think of them. You can always go back and change them if you decide to change your mind. I actually find it useful to keep track of them in the ballot and make sure you get them in by the 15th. And this week we've got a handful of games to talk about. Just a few more. The first one that I was going to talk about this week was one I just wanted to briefly return to because I already talked about it last time we talked about IFComp 2023, but I'd only barely started it, and now I've finished it, and I just thought it was worth returning to and just talking about a little bit further, even though I don't want to recap everything that I said about it. But Lake Adventure by BJ Best, so far, maybe my favorite thing I've played in the comp this year, although
Nice.
There's a lot of things that I haven't played. So take that for what it's worth. But BJ Best is great. And I can just say that everything that I thought was the promise of this game did pan out. I already kind of talked about a lot of the things I liked about it. I love I love that this is a game built to run in DOS, so it's a game that's the sort of in-universe explanation for this game is that it was a sort of hobby-written game by a kid who was processing basically his sister's death in 1993 and updated it in small ways over the years after that, and it's being played through in 2020 by that guy. Sort of side by side virtually with a coworker who happened to have a DOS machine capable of playing this old game that he dug out of a floppy on his in his basement or wherever. And so it's got this interesting sort of temporal weirdness to it where parts of this game are an earnest child trying to create a game. Parts of it you see the sad teen coming through that idly updated this game, and then you also of course get the backwards facing perspective of the adult who is sort of trying to process this in retrospect while also kind of awkwardly talking about it with a coworker. It's a really neat set of perspectives. It's pretty puzzle light, but it's also extremely map heavy. So this is something that could be a problem for you, which is why for me, I actually find just getting my head into the space of like navigating, you know, a bunch of twisty passageways all alike, you know, is a difficult thing for me. So I really appreciated that this game comes with one of the better feelies, if that's a valid word for a PDF, that I've seen in a game in the comp in a long time. The walkthrough PDF, which I really think is designed to just be straight up used as you're playing, unless you're like an absolute like map pervert and you want to draw your own.
Shout out to our map perverts in our
hell yeah. Yeah. This is a scan of a 90s Mead notebook that says Eddie Hughes Math on the cover.
Oh.
And has several scanned pages of ballpoint pen combination design document and map, and you can just sort of functionally use it as a map, so you don't have to go through and draw your own map as you're going. The one thing that I was really like expecting and hoping for in this game, and I didn't find it, and I don't know if it's because I didn't look in the right places or didn't find it, you know, or if it's just not something that was there. Was there are little elements in this sort of design document / map that have numbers and other information that seemed like maybe room codes or something like that, things that I couldn't figure out what they were. So for example, on a page that lists has the map of the area just outside the house that you begin the game in, there's like a part in sort of the margins at the top that says creature 501, weapon 373, time thresh, and then there's a scribble and a number 6, like stuff like that. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I never found it. So it's very possible that there's some like interesting aspect to this game that I completely missed. Some of the stuff that's scribbled in the margin seems to be just, you know, there for the sort of like sad reality of the game. There's a scribble in the margin that's like hospital room 241, 5 to 9 p.m., where he was clearly just keeping notes on like when he could visit his sister in the hospital, right? And that isn't exactly in the game, but it is sort of also in the game, you know. But there's these elements that were like that, or a couple of other things that like made me think like there's some like God mode code that I'm missing here or something that I would have liked to explore further, but it had some really lovely stuff in it. So I think this is absolutely a game worth playing. The browser version is fine. If you want to boot it up in a browser, it will boot a web browser based version of DOSBox. I've poked around in that now. I hadn't last time. And it's actually really kind of cool. You can, you know, full screen it if you want, and it gives you a really nice, like, emulated DOS computer right there in your browser. And that's probably the way I'd recommend playing it. I did install DOSBox in order to play this one, but I think probably the browser version is fine. So anyway, I just wanted to strongly recommend this. I know I talked about it last time, but I will strongly recommend folks check it out because I think it's one of the better things I played this year in the comp. Laura, what have you got?
Nice. Well, I'm going to start off with Assembly, which is a parser game about assembling IKEA furniture and also summoning portals. I think this is one of the more intriguing descriptions, so I'll read it real quick. There's one box left at the beginning, and then, as I say, Assembly is a story of magic and adventure. Can you assemble a small table? Can you save the world from the vengeance of ancient gods? Content warning, supernatural themes, and mild peril. Hour and a half. So, dove right in. You start off in your apartment. You're in what should be your bedroom, or will be once you finish assembling all of your IKEA furniture. And there's a box left, which is kind of weird because you thought you had all the furniture assembled, but why not? You start assembling it. Side note on plot, at this point, I was very happy because I was worried I had to type out all the IKEA instructions word for word, and they had a link to the cheat sheet that we've seen before. I think Plotkin made it or someone, but the very simple one. So I just said, like, put screws on tabletop. And then they'd be like, yes, you do the correct IKEA thing. And I was like, whew, okay, cool. This game's going to be a lot easier than I thought it would be. You assemble your table, and oh no, what have you done? Ancient portals are awakened, and now your mission is completely different, and you are teleported to the wildness of an IKEA store, but empty, with all of the peril that being in an empty, big IKEA store will generate in your mind. This is delightful.
Yeah.
I know Reagan played this too, so I want to get your take. But
I did. I loved this one too. I think altogether, I think this is a really clever conceit for puzzle parser. I think the execution of it worked pretty well for me. Some of the puzzles were a little wonky in ways that honestly,
I had
I'm
to
not
do
even
some
sure
backtracking.
Yeah.
That I think that was on me. I didn't examine everything up front.
That was my thing
which is
too. Yeah.
the cardinal rule. Examine everything in every room just in case you need it later. You will backtrack if you do not do that.
Yeah, and I missed something fully by accident, but that's something that I would consider like a little irritation about it is like part of the introduction once you get to the IKEA is you go through the showroom and you can examine all the furniture in the showroom. And there's not a ton of pieces, but there if you miss any, many of them become important later. And because like as you examine them, you learn their like very IKEA-ish names for the furniture and like what they are and so on. And that information, you don't have to like write it down or anything, but it becomes important later. And there were some puzzles that I couldn't complete easily later in ways that were quite confusing and I had to consult a walkthrough. It does have a hint system. You can ask for hints and it'll straight up tell you, hey, go back to the showroom and look at the lamp or whatever.
And a nice little their guide is lately IKEA themed. It's supposed to look like an IKEA instruction booklet, which I found pretty charming. But I did do a lot of backtracking because I didn't examine the thing. Appreciated the hints telling me that was exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah, but the thing that is very clever about this is like the whole puzzle structure around this is around building and disassembling IKEA furniture. And so and so a lot of what you need to do is like, if there's a piece of IKEA furniture in the way, you need to find the instructions and
disassemble
then do
it.
the instructions in reverse.
Backwards,
in order to take it apart so that you can get past that kind of thing. And that's I think a very clever conceit for puzzles. I also really liked the idea of I saved a couple screenshots of some of the writing early on because there's I really like the idea of not only a piece of IKEA like flat furniture that is an altar to a dark god, but that the instructions are a ritual tricking you into summoning it essentially, and
that the idea is that like all dark god rituals, they come from the north, and so they were like, well, so does IKEA.
Yeah, so I took a couple screenshots of the intro text here when you assemble the dolmen, which is the
first thing in the apartment.
Truly unsettling coffee table. It says, that's strange. It's probably the simplest thing you've built today. Just a couple of juxtaposed fiberboard slabs, but something about it has more of a presence than you expected. You keep catching yourself staring at it from the corner of your eyes and holding your breath. You're not even sure this is meant to be a table at all now. An altar? No, that's not right. But what? And then you examine the table and it says, you have trouble not examining it, honestly. Though on the surface, there's not much to see, just a couple of angled boards capped with a solid slab of medium density fiberboard. Something about it seems significant, though. Carefully formed, like a rune in some language you only half understand. Touch table. As you reach towards the dolmen, something shifts and settles in your mind, and you understand it's not a table, but a doorway, and the door is opening. I loved that. I loved this. Very funny. I mean, who hasn't had the experience of like wandering through an IKEA and wondering about all of the names? And this is like a perfect explanation. Of course, IKEA is weird because it's a big cult to weird, Swedish minimalist gods, right?
This very much is reminding me of that horror game that came out a couple of it's not that long ago, that where you're trapped in an infinite IKEA. Have you seen this game?
I don't think I have, but I think I heard about it.
Okay, yeah. There's a horror game called The Store is Closed, where you are trapped in a infinitely large IKEA and being pursued by evil staff, and you have to kind of craft weapons to defend yourself and make improvised forts.
That
to
tracks,
stay alive.
because one of the funnier moments earlier in this game is that you wander into the showroom area, and the first line is that line from Zork that's like, you're in a bunch of twisting passageways all alike, and I was like, that absolutely applies here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick with the showroom area is that it is constantly changing. You cannot navigate through it in the sort of north. You can't map it. It randomly reconfigures itself. You just have to follow the arrows on the floor, which felt very IKEA to me.
Yes, you would walk from the south, and they'd be like, "Great, you can follow the arrows that go from east to west," and you're like, "But I came from the south. How is this happening?"
I love it. So yeah, I would say, like, theming wise, I think this is a 10 out of 10. I think puzzle execution wise, I mean, I've played games that, like, made me feel smarter, or felt more like smooth and polished, but on balance, I think this is a really clever, such a clever theming for a parser puzzle game that it got a lot of credit there.
And because you don't have to follow the instructions exactly word for word, you can use kind of shortcutty things like I did, put screw on table. I think it's a lot less irritating this could have been. This could have been a disaster if you had to word perfect say every instruction back. If you this could have been so much less forgiving. So I give it a lot of props for that. I had fun with it. I think, again, your mileage may vary. It's a lot of it's not, the main insight is you can assemble and disassemble the furniture, which isn't a huge insight.
Personally, I've never taken anything from IKEA apart and been able to reassemble it.
Yes. Correct. The bed behind me is going to fall apart, Roomy Boof. They were like, nope, this is not going to make it one more way.
It can happen. I had an IKEA bed that was like a full-size bed that Jamie and I bought well over a decade ago, and it eventually became our guest bed rather than our actual bed. But we moved with it for
this bed has moved 5 or 6 times. And the reason we have it is because it's has storage under it, and it's not the outside frame is not going to make it. Everything else is, but
we finally just sold the thing because it was like, I didn't feel right throwing it away, but I sold it for like $10 to somebody because I was like, let somebody else use this thing.
Maybe someday I'll live in an apartment with storage, and I won't have to store things under my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll have a house someday.
Little making me happy. My birthday gift, both from my wife and to myself this year, was we bought a brand new bed for our master bedroom. We upgraded size. We went up to a king. I feel like true royalty now.
You're never going to be able to go back. Every time you're in a hotel room, you're going to be complaining about how dare they make me stay in a queen.
I'm never going to go back.
I don't know if your bed situation is like mine, but even after upgrading to the largest bed available, I am still confined to about the 6 inches at the rightmost edge, by the pile of pillows. I am looking at floor every night.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is, having a wife.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how small they are. They take up a lot of bed. But it's as it should be. Works out fine.
Thank you, Ben Kirwin, for assembly and our bed digression.
Yes.
What's next?
Well, let's put this one to bed. And what is next on our list?
It's the Whispers. Shane, you're up.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, do you want to hear about puppets or communists? But we'll start with the communists.
Communists, yay.
So the Whispers was kind of a... I picked this one kind of on a whim, but also kind of because I recently read a book by George Saunders called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain. I've always loved the writing of George Saunders, one of America's greatest short story writers, and he has taught a class on Russian literature for many years. And so I was enjoying that. And so this one kind of drew me in. The Whispers is an interactive play, and it's stylistically the way it's set up. I have not played something like this before. The Whispers is a interactive play set in Russia in 1938. And it is very much like sitting in the audience of a piece of participatory theater where the audience is voting on what will happen next based on cheering or booing. And so it's a choice-based game, but you're interacting with it very much as an audience member. In fact, I grabbed a clip here. The introduction by the guide character, I think, sets it up very well. He says, "This is a truly socialist play. For in this play, it is you, the people, who will decide what happens. It is you, the people, who will step forward and make key decisions that should be yours to make. It's a very simple system. At certain points during tonight's performance, I will come forward and ask you, the people, for your decision on what will happen next. I will present you with the obvious options one by one. You will clap or cheer, if you wish, for the option that you wish to see acted out. I will judge the option with the most recognition, and the actors will perform it. Simple? Let us start with an example. Let's say that our character is considering faking an illness in order to take a day off work. Should his neighbor report him? What is the will of the people? On the motion of report or don't report, I will hear first those in favor of report. Yay! Secondly, I will hear from those in favor of don't report. Yay. So the overall kind of setting is Russia in, like I said, 1938, kind of between the wars, kind of in the height of the Russian secret police kind of terrorizing people. I am not an expert on that era of history. I'm not really a reader of Russian literature, although I guess I now aspire to be, having read all this stuff by George Saunders, kind of, which takes you through a bit of it. Speaking of Russian plays, Reagan and I have a little bit of experience there back in college. Reagan, you remember?
God, you're going to give me PTSD if you bring that up.
What was the name of that play we were in? We were in
the something the inspector something.
The Tom Stoppard.
No,
it's a Russian play. We played. Hang on, we played the characters Dobchinsky and Bobchinsky. I'm gonna Google
the Inspector General.
The Inspector General. That's
that's not it. Hang on. It's something like that. I've forgotten it. It's been a long time. It was college. It's embarrassing.
The government inspector. It's
the government inspector. That's it.
Yes, this has been a very long time. I'm giving myself way too much credit. I am not I'm not really educated in Russian or theater. Or history.
Well, I mean, in college we read and watched a lot of Russian plays, but that's about the extent of it.
But that said, I thought this was very well written. I kind of often forgot that I was reading IF rather than a script. So I was kind of lost on some of the things that really are based on a knowledge of pre-World War II Russian politics, although this very nicely does include a glossary. The main story is about a couple named Agnesa and Nikolai, and there's lots of little side stories and lots of little choices to make scene by scene. Ultimately, I would say this is a very dense read, and it may not be for everyone. But if you heard what I've said and are interested, I thought it was really well done. What intrigues me, I really would like to see, is that this is, it seems, designed to be something that can set up a theater company to perform this work. So you can do this as an interactive theater, but they do also include an annotated script for potential directors and actors, which I think is very interesting. So this is truly the very first socialist play. I recommend it. Multiple endings. I think I'm very interested in kind of participatory theater that's done in interesting ways. This one is very straightforward in terms of its setup, but I think using that setup as a frame for interactive fiction works really well. And so I definitely would say you'll know if this one is for you.
Yeah. Did either of you watch the Twitch stream of the seagull on The Sims 4?
No, what?
No.
You're like, no, Laura, why would I have seen this? This is something I was really sad to have missed because I missed it and they took it off streaming. It's one of the things I was like, oh, I'll watch the YouTube, and I went and they were like, this video is taken down. But Celine Song, who just did Past Lives.
Are you telling me that like Anton Chekhov did like a copyright strike on it?
Like
or
Celine Song, who legit is probably going to get nominated, like her stuff's going to get nominated for an Oscar for Past Lives. She did a virtual season during the pandemic where she did a 2-night, 6-hour production where she tried to get The Sims 4 to do the seagull.
I wonder how well that went.
Where she tried to like get all of the characters to do stuff, like design the characters to work, and like tried to like manipulate them into acting out the seagull in The Sims 4.
That's pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, while she streamed live on Twitch, and everyone like gave examples. Like, she apparently had a like long casting period where she was putting like hats on people and things like that. So,
well,
just
like
throwing that out as a thing that happened.
Easy to set up. If I recall, the seagull, the set for the seagull is pretty much just a bunch of chairs on the stage, or at least that's how it's been staged famously. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That so?
Yeah, I know she also used a cheat code because she's like, they're aristocracy. They've cheated.
There you go.
So anyway, just listeners, that exists. Enjoy knowing that exists.
That's pretty cool.
There's no
I have no transition.
No, there's no transition from that to fixing your mother's printer, which is the next game on our list. So this is the next thing that I played. I played this mostly based on what I thought was a really charming like piece of art. Sometimes you just scroll through the list and one of the little artworks that they create as the like header image for a game kind of pops off the page at you. And for me, that was Fixing Your Mother's Printer. So this is a game by Geoffrey Golden, and a little bit of disclosure. I found it after I'd already played the game. He may have mentioned it and I didn't pick up on it, or maybe he didn't and he was being modest. But it's programmed by Josh Grams, who is one of our patrons on our Patreon, which I realized after the fact. So that didn't bias my opinion on the game, at least not during my playthrough, but perhaps retrospectively. But anyway, I quite liked Fix Your Mother's Printer. Fix Your Mother's Printer is it's a game made in ink, but with a really custom interface. So it looks as if you are sort of have a window open in a fake video chat screen for an app called Swoon. And it's just a video call with your mom in which she's asking for your help to fix her printer. And, you've also got some stuff that you're calling to talk with her about. You're considering a change in your career, but she really, really wants you to help her fix her printer before she's willing to talk with you about that. And this is something that like I immediately connected with, because like, this is something that I think almost all of us have done, right? Like, you have those older people in your life who need a little bit of tech support. And there are different ways that can go. For some people, like that interaction, having a tech support conversation with an elder person in your life is like, an immediate source of dread or something that you loathe. And like, fair enough, like that can be a really annoying thing, but it can also be like a thing that you do to care for people in your life. For me, like, my mother's not with us. I don't have a parental relationship with somebody who I'm like providing this kind of tech support for, but I have older people in my life, some of my uncles and aunts, who will call me specifically for printer stuff, or like, send me a text asking.
I'm constantly calling Reagan for technical help of one kind or another.
Yeah. Some people loathe that, and I personally have never really minded it because it's something that I know I can do, and I know, helps and shows that I care. And, like, so it's an act of love that I can do for relatively low effort. And, maybe in some cases high impact. And, I've always seen it as sort of like a gift that I have that I can give to people. And I appreciate that. But like this game lets you play out this interaction however you personally relate to that type of interaction. There is some like, in some ways, the interaction with the mom in this. She's this. By the way, the art style was part of what really drew me in. The mom is this very like line art illustrated. I don't know how you describe this particular style of art. It's this sort of like almost like iconography style of portrait art that I always sort of connect with like Japanese subway signs or something like that, right? Like it has this sort of like low detail, sort of fat lines, rounded shapes, maybe like vaguely anime adjacent, but not. Lots of like disconnected lines, that kind of thing. It's a very specific art style.
Looking at the art you have in the outline, it's very like instruction manual, but not childish. Like things are a little bit more detailed than a straight instruction manual, but it's very flat color, minimalist background.
Yeah, if you bought like a Nintendo Wii and you like looked in the paperwork and there was a thing like with a little character showing you not to throw your Wiimote at the screen, they probably looked like this. You know, it's that kind of art style. And so anyway, it's just sort of a conversation between you and your mom. And she expressing a lot of frustration. It has some sort of like light comedy to it. She's really stressed out because she has to print out this illustration that's really important to her for her little like hobby / retiree career, where she's trying to teach about topiary to children to try to keep the bush shaving arts alive, which, oh, come on. But, you know, she's a retiree with a hobby / art that she wants to do. And, you know, you can either mock her for that or you can, you know, say how much you admire her for being an artist. You know, it's nice. It gives you a sort of a full range of options with like, how do you relate to this elder in your life who's asking you for help with the printer? It takes a surprisingly long time to fix this printer. It's a complicated printer, I guess.
Printers are really tough. Like I don't like printer calls. They're like the lowest on the totem pole of tech support.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Printers as a technology are this bizarre interface between the worlds of the digital and the physical, and like there are so many. Like if you were to disassemble a printer and just set all the moving parts aside, I think it would. You know, if you lined them up, it would stretch to the moon, and the tolerances and detail and that's needed in a modern printer is like truly a work of incredible. It's like printers are a masterpiece of miniaturization, and they are nothing but loathed for it because
I know it's awful. This is why I've never bought a 3D
Is there a
printer.
printer
It's
in
like,
that book that I got you for our birthday, Reagan? I wonder.
Oh,
if
there's
a
not,
printer
as
in
far as
there.
I saw, but that was awesome. Shane bought me Shane's birthday present to me this year was a book called Things Fall Apart or something
Or
like that.
Things Come Apart, I think.
Things Come
Yeah,
Apart.
Things Fall Apart is an actual work of literature.
Yes, well, Things Come Apart is a photography book of like exploded photography of like extremely minutely disassembled objects, like old phones and old Macintoshes and other things like that exploded into tiny pieces.
I really fell in love with that. This is another total diversion, but I fell in love with that book. It's this photographer, Todd McClellan, who his style of photography is to just lovingly disassemble everyday objects and carefully lay out every component on a large flat surface and then photograph them. And so this book, Things Come Apart. This is actually Things Come Apart 2.0 that I gave you, which is like an updated, expanded version of the book that has basically every cool piece of tech from the entire stretch of my lifetime, from when I was a kid to things that are brand new.
It's a Mac Classic in there.
Yeah, the cover image is the Mac Classic, and he does two styles of photograph. One is these beautifully laid out images, and then the second kind is he'll do these drop photos where he'll take all those pieces that once he's finished photographing them splayed out surgically, he'll then just sort of throw them in the air, and then you'll see all of these pieces kind of in motion, hanging in space. I really, really like this book. I I bought a copy for myself. I got one for Reagan. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. Thank you. I definitely recommend fixing your mother's printer. I think it's low on, it's like this is a just a straight up sort of conversation. It's playing out a conversation. So it's not like there's any like puzzles to be had here or anything. But I think it was a pleasant time, and it's pretty short. I think it was like 15 minutes maybe. So I would recommend it, and I thought well implemented, and it even has little options like a dark mode if that's something you care about. I mean,
Nice.
it's just a nicely done thing, and the art looks good, and I quite liked it. So I would recommend it.
So next on the list is a parser called Codename OBSCURA, and this is about an hour, unless you do what I did and get kicked off after like 5 turns. But I'll get to that in a minute. So spy game. Retro pixel art, interesting. And Reagan, I would like your ears on this, because this was completely deployed in HTML for this, but instead it was developed in Adventuron 8-bit compatibility mode, and it was first created in 1987, but it became too demanding for memory, so eventually ported it to the web. So it's written in Adventuron 8-bit compatibility mode, and it has retro style, like very pixel art graphics. So
Interesting.
Not sure if you know anything about that, but I was like, interesting. First thing you do, it boots up and it asks you if you want music, and I was like, I'm always gonna pick music. So yes,
I have to say I didn't actually play this one, but I did fire it up, and this was one of the bigger surprises of IFComp of all time.
I was not expecting it to
just
look like
how
this.
much it completely took over. Like instantly, I hit that play on the web, and it instantly takes over my entire computer screen, and makes everything look like it's on like a ZX Spectrum.
Yeah, you have booted up an old console and you're playing it on this, is what it feels like. So good job. The copyright is actually 1987, 2023. So I don't know what Mika Kujala, sorry, Finland, for mispronouncing your name. Sorry for assuming you're from Finland. I just tried to Google you, and everybody with that last name was from Finland.
Oh, so. I'm sorry. I just found the thing. It's a Spectrum game, or it was intended. Okay, so the ZX Spectrum is a really interesting old computer. It was extremely low memory, like very old 8-bit computer that has a sort of a distinctive look to a lot of the games. Like it had I think compared to some other 8-bit computers, I think a relatively high resolution screen, and it has like a very particular color palette. Like you look at a ZX Spectrum game, and like it's a ZX Spectrum game.
It's definitely got a specific look, and it especially all the way down to the font.
Yeah, and this is apparently shooting for. There's a new ZX Spectrum computer, like a ZX Spectrum compatible, that's sort of like a retro hobbyist thing coming out at some point called the ZX Spectrum Next. That's like compatible with Spectrum games, but has more memory or something. So apparently she's developing this for that, which I think is a cool project.
Yeah,
but it's good that she was also able to do an HTML version, because how many people are
if
buy it as the
Mika's
Spectrum Next
gender identity. Just sorry for messing up your name and everything.
Apologies there. We don't know.
We're doing our best with names on a website. But this is a old school game in look and feel, in that like it's got if you've played Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there's a famous puzzle early on where if you don't do something in X turns, you're just gonna end the game, and they have one of those early on in here, which feels like a callback, but I haven't had that in a long time because I play a lot of friendly modern games. I didn't bounce off. I just was like, oh, the game is over already. Cool. Guess I'm going to look at the hint system and figure out what I did wrong. So just warning of that ahead of time. If you're going to do that and get mad, maybe this isn't a game for you. There aren't puzzles like that later. But it does have that really old school feel. There's also Italian in it. This game is set in Italy. You're a spy who is in your apartment. You hear a gunshot. Next door, your spy friend has been shot and you have to take over his mission. And it's pretty straightforward. that's not saying that the flavor isn't good, but like it's definitely a puzzly parser with a lot of like, oh, I need to go get the thing, and so I can go put this in the slot, and oh, cool, I need a crucifix for this. Like the puzzles are very like that old school.
Is this
style.
thing set in the same place as Wheels of Aurelia? Because it's Italian?
It is, yes. It is set in the exact same place.
I like that game. Okay.
Yeah, Aurelia is, from what I can tell, the highway. So it's a little town off of it. But yeah, you are an operator for the Turtle Organization, the tactical unit for rapid and thorough lethal espionage. So
wouldn't it be cool if Italy was real and not just in indie games that we play?
I know, right? Oh, you go everywhere in this little area, though. Like you have so many locations. If you like the art, there's art for every location. There are, I'm trying not to spoil, but like, I'll say there's ruins. You get to go to a horse track. You can go to a bar. You can go to some really cool places I don't want to say. But like, there's just a lot of different moving around. It feels very spy James Bond. Like you're in a cool location, you're going to go everywhere, and you're going to do like one thing in each location and move on. That also gives that older feeling of like moving. It's not like you're going to completely dig into one location forever, but you're going to keep moving around and go to place after place after place. I liked it as a bit of an antidote. It feels very different from a lot of the other games in the comp. And the hint system and the walkthrough are both good. So I used it more than I normally do, not because it was hard, but because I got a little gun shy after that first unforgiving, like the game ended thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to use hints liberally because I just want to make sure I go through. That said, it's only about an hour overall, even with my locking myself out. I think it is definitely worth playing as I wouldn't say a palate cleanser, but if you want something that feels very unlike everything else in the comp, I would check this out. Oh, and to clarify, Aurelia, I know it's the name of the highway. I don't know if it's an actual location, but it's the area. So same area, same vibe.
Well, that is very cool. I'm very impressed by the graphics for that. I'm always a little bit surprised when these games have any graphics at all, and to see it just sort of take over the whole screen and have just these very colorful, if severely pixelated scenarios. That's very, very cool.
I saw in a review that there are more than 60 hand-drawn images in the game.
That's great.
Which is wild for an IFComp entry. Well,
one that I am kind of glad did not have art is the game Put Your Hand Inside the Puppet Head.
Oh, no!
So I think there's a strong horror tradition of puppets being horribly creepy. I remember as a wee lad being terrified by the film Puppet Master. But recently I have seen several prominent examples of creepiness instilled into the kind of puppet that I never found creepy, which is the classic Jim Henson sock puppet style puppet. And there's been I'm trying to remember, there's a YouTuber screamy game of this style. There was an ARG called Welcome Home that I was checking out a little while ago that had the same vibe. But the vibe here is this is a hard game to pin down. Put Your Hand Inside the Puppet Head is a choice-based horror puzzle that plays much more like a parser game that is seemingly set inside of like a twisted, truly messed up version of Jim Henson Studios, where you have come to this studio in order to, with a guy in a van, and you're going to be extracting the puppets. And I mean, this is not really a twist, but you get in there and you solve some very simple initial exploration based stuff. Get a key, and eventually you're going to get a puppet. And as soon as you put the puppet on your hand, it comes to life. And so there's an element of...
Does it come to life separate from you, or
yes,
is it like
it has its own voice, it is its own character. There's certainly more than a dozen. I don't know exactly how many. There's more than a dozen puppets in this game, and each of them has their own role. And you, the player, have but two hands, and your goal is to extract 10 or more puppets from this place. The gameplay is really weird. It has that kind of go north, go south kind of interaction to it. It's very easy because, like I said, it's choice based. You're making selections just by clicking the text, so there's not a lot of that hunt the noun, but you will really want to have a map. And the reason is the gameplay is basically Pac-Man. This place is laid out like a kind of grid-ish, and throughout this maze of this studio, there are the guards, which are basically monsters that are color-coded, much like the Pac-Man ghosts. Like there's a red one and blue one, and I forget which colors I actually saw, but yeah, they're everywhere. And each of the puppets has its own abilities and its own personality, and it's I didn't find it quite as scary as all that. There is certainly some horror elements and some body horror, but you're not really, as I think is probably appropriate for something like that. For something of this kind of genre mashup, you're not truly in that much danger. What happens if you are gotten by the monsters is they take your puppets away. So I did not complete this one, but it's mainly because I spent a large chunk of my time with it trying to figure out how the puzzles were supposed to work. And it took me a long time to realize that, like, when I'm comparing this to Pac-Man, you have to learn the movement patterns of these monsters. They are moving in very carefully. They're moving in very repeatable movement patterns through their area, and dodging them is a big part of it. If you are struggling with this game, what you should do, and what I did not do until later, before I was almost out of time to play it, is go to the guy that's in the van and ask him for advice, because he is a font of information. So I
the
like
sketchy guy in the van.
I like this game a lot. It's creative, it's weird, it's easy to play. The puzzles I liked. They're not too hard. The fact that you have these puppet characters is cool. Another thing that I like, if you go into the place to kind of explore with no puppets at all, the enemies don't come after you at all. So you really can explore. The enemies are after the puppets, not you. So it's a pretty good one. I recommend it. I'm probably going to rate it fairly highly if I get back to it and put enough time into it to give it an honest rating. But for the podcast here, I'll go ahead and give it a big thumbs up.
Excellent. From putting your hands inside puppet heads to Dick McButts, that is my attempt at a transition. It's just the two titles.
There's no transition to Dick McButts.
There's no transition.
Dick McButts Gets Kicked in the Nuts is the title of one of the games in the comp this year. That is all caps. Dick McButts Gets Kicked in the Nuts. I'm going to say that a bunch of times because I love
Dick
saying it out loud.
McButts Gets Kicked
because
in
it's
the nuts.
Poetry. Dick McButts Gets Kicked in the Nuts is the most perfect poetry I've seen in the comp. So this is a weird one. There's a couple of things about it that are very
beautiful
notable.
Rhyming couplet of a name.
I love it. I was saying this on the Discord, so I hope folks will forgive me for repeating myself. But there's something Shakespearean about the title Dick McButts.
I don't care if you forget
in the
repeating
nuts.
myself. I'm going to say Dick McButts Gets Kicked in the Nuts again.
I know. I'm going to say it again and again. It's not only is it
Assonance, consonants,
it's
all
almost
there.
it's almost a pentameter.
Did you say ass?
I said assonance.
I
Consonants is
like
it just sounds great.
It's great. It's such a good title. It's got the crudeness is a perfect measure of crudeness and a perfect measure of like it's just perfect. So I don't know who Hubert Janus is, but he has a knack for whatever this is. But this is a really weird troll. It's something we talk about a lot in this. Sometimes people enter like troll games in the comp, right? Sometimes they do it under pseudonyms. There's no rule against that.
I have in the past been stumped by puzzles and accused non-troll games of being troll games. I am sorry.
Well, there's something in this game that I think is a very deliberate troll, or at the very least, a play for the coveted Golden Banana of Discord. If you happen to be new to the comp, you may not be aware there is a sort of unofficial like award given called the Golden Banana of Discord, which is an award for the game with the highest standard deviation in score, which is basically the most controversial game. You know, if it gets all like ones and tens in equal measure, then it would have a high standard deviation. So I think this may be a play for that, because the author of this did one very specific weird thing that I happened to fall prey to. 2/3 of the folks who play this game get the standard version of the game, which I'll describe in a moment. 1/3 of the people that play this game will get a different version of the game entirely. And which version of the game you get is random chance and is saved by your browser. So unless you go to some extremes and try things like loading the game in a private window, you will always get whichever version of the game you initially get.
And there's no warning up front about this?
There's no warning up front about it. It doesn't say anything about it. The only description on the game, other than Dick McButts gets kicked in the nuts, is it's exactly what it sounds like. Content warnings are flashing images, crude humor, testicular trauma, and Hitler. So one aspect of that, flashing images, is specific to the quote-unquote bad version, which is the one that I got first. So you boot this game up, and it features the stick man drawing of Dick McButts getting kicked in the nuts in alternating like second-long flashes between like pink or magenta and like lime green, and it's like flashing like it's trying to induce a seizure, and then on top of that is projected at various angles. It keeps switching the angle of the text as if it was like moving around in weird random ways. And as you click through it, and the text is basically like a poorly spelled, poorly proofread, weirdly bad grammar description of like Dick McButts getting kicked in the nuts by first Hitler and then Darth Vader shows up and kicks you in the nuts, and et cetera, et cetera. And it goes on for quite a long time, but it's like zero interactivity. Now, I will say, I was cackling at it. It's like, it's just the level of like low humor that was like it was just awful enough that I was like, this is fucking hilarious. Like, I don't know why, but something about it was very, very funny to me, even though I was playing what I turned out to be like.
Perhaps it was all the kicking in the nuts.
Perhaps it was that, you know? Maybe it was. But it's basically exactly what it sounds like. Dick McButts gets kicked in the nuts again and again and again. It smacks Dick right in the fucking nuts! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Lots of that kind of thing. Anyway, I played through that. Then I found out later, I got the bad version. And I played it again. And I played it in a private window, and I got a much more calmly presented choice-based interactive fiction game. It is still about Dick McButts, but the first line of this is in a very staid way. It's on a black background with soothing purple text. Dick McButts is concerned about the title of this story. And of course, it is a choice-based narrative wherein you play as Dick McButts trying to avoid getting kicked in the nuts. He's sitting in a Chinese restaurant. He's known all his life that he's going to get kicked in the nuts because everyone knows that Dick McButts gets kicked in the nuts. And so he opens a fortune cookie and it says, "Today's the day, Dick." And then you have a number of choices where you have to try to escape being kicked in the nuts. And no matter what you do, you get kicked in the nuts. And it's got more branches and more options than you would expect. Now, I didn't play through the game many times. I think I played through it 3 or 4 times. And I got a few different versions of the ending. For example, I waited around thinking, if I'm perfectly still, what will happen to me? And of course, the Terminator shows up and it has a rocket-propelled nut-kicking leg, and it kicks straight through the table and into my nuts. But you can try a lot of different approaches. You can leave the restaurant you're in at various different times. You can try all sorts of different ways to flee your fate. All of them ending in Dick McButts getting kicked in the nuts. I from what I gather from reading some other reviews of this game, there are many endings, including a true ending that I definitely didn't see. So there's more to this than meets the eye. Not only if you got the regular version, but if you happen to get the quote unquote bad version that is like minimally interactive and visually distinctly trying to make you hate it, try this again in a private window. That said, I think the bad version was funnier. Like, I know they're both like they're, I don't know. It's a weird thing, but like I cackled at the like extremely bad version, and the other version I chuckled. They were both funny, but I don't know.
Some of the submissions for IFComp can be very serious.
Yes.
Yes.
Plays on interactive Russian plays. There's all sorts of very serious things, and to see something that is both aiming for just a cheap laugh, and then also trying to manipulate the comp itself into stealing the coveted banana is very funny to see.
I agree. So I applaud Hubert Janus. Whatever he's trying to do here, I like it.
Wait, did you say Janus? Because isn't that the
two-faced god?
2 faces? Much like Dick McButts gets kicked in the nuts?
I'm quite sure it's a pseudonym now that you mention it. I bet it's a pseudonym. I wonder whose. But
and if it's not a pseudonym, kudos on that. That
it's an aptonym.
There's a name for there's a name for when your last name predestines you to a
nominative determinism.
Nominative determinism. Thank you for the save, Reagan.
But Dick McButts does indeed get kicked in the nuts, and it's worth the 15 minutes it'll take you to click through it. So just to try your luck and see which version you get, honestly, give that a try at the very least. Laura, do you have next?
Yes, I do. And speaking of nominative determinism, Johnny Montana must be a cowboy. Correct. Mm-hmm. All the Troubles Come My Way, or Johnny Montana and His Missing Cowboy Hat by Sam Dunnachie, is just a little game, like half an hour with replays. It is basically that you are a cowboy who has shown up in New York City. It is not about how you ended up in New York City. It is not about going back. You just live in New York City now, modern New York City, despite being from 1883. And you are just trying to get through your day. But you don't feel like yourself without your hat. So again, you're not trying to time travel back. You are literally just trying to get your hat back and not get yourself hungover. The skills system, this is a choice-based game, but they do have stats, and your stats are things like rodeo, cowboy justice, southern charm, and then different things you drink can have different effects on the stats, or different things you do. I went pretty high on cowboy justice and rodeo because how could I not? The description of rodeo Rodeo is your force of will on this earth. It's the feeling you get after roping a particularly wild cow, or the satisfying feeling you get when you purposefully walk a little bit too loud. The universe is yours, and rodeo is the vessel through which you interact with it. It's that instincts-based, act first and ask questions, never feelings cowboys need. Other people might call it stupidity, but you're walking too loud to hear them.
I love it.
And if you loved that, the whole game is just that. It's just vibes. It's cowboy vibes. You were trying to do very simple things like get out of the bathtub you're sleeping in and figure out where your hat is. You can choose. The first replay, I never left the house. Second replay, I guess light spoilers for a 30-minute game, but you can do a playthrough where you don't leave the house. I ended up in my second play in Times Square. As someone who lives in New York, I never want to be in Times Square. But I laughed really hard, like disrupting the game rhythm hard at the phrase, Times Square smells like burning plastic and money. It's like, it does smell like burning plastic and money. Like, I do disagree, though. They said it was everybody there was from New York. And I was like, maybe this cowboy thinks that, but I disagree. People who live there do not want to be there. Anyway, it's light. It's fun. I found a couple ways to get my hat back, and I enjoyed all of them. I keep saying that it's about getting your hat back because I thought this was going to be a bigger game. And when it ended after I got my hat, I was like, oh, that's it. But the 30 minutes is multiple playthroughs. And I think the writing is just charming as heck.
Yeah, I played through a bit of this as well. Co-signed. I don't have anything to add because I don't think I played enough endings or what have you.
I mean, it's light. Like, that's the thing. Like, I like a tight, fun, well-written, under an hour game. And I've been playing a lot of heavy parsers. So this was a really nice accompaniment to my parser palette, which I've been going pretty hard on. I need to find a couple more choice-based ones to round out my IFComp 2023 experience. So please tell me if you've got any choice-based ones, especially ones on the lighter side that I should check out. Holler at your girl.
Also, this made me think, like, there's not enough stories about cowboys from the 1800s transported to modern America.
Just hanging out. Yeah.
I think we need more of that.
100%.
So I think that's it for us this week. We've got we've covered a number of different games here, and we'll be back soon with some more, probably before the end of the comp, but maybe just after. If you have games that you're interested in the comp, either ones that you haven't played and you want to hear us talk about, or maybe you have played them and you want to tell us what's good, let us know. Best way to do that is to become a patron of the show and get on our Discord. We have a channel for IFComp that'll be running throughout the season. So you can go to shortgame.fm or patreon.com/theshortgame. Either way, there'll be a big thing there where you can subscribe to our Patreon, and all of our patrons at any level get instant access to our Discord. We love all of our patrons. Thank you so much for supporting the show. It really means a lot to us. It helps us do what we do, offsets the cost of things like equipment upgrades and server fees and all of the other stuff that make this show happen. And it does add up. So we really do appreciate that support. But also, most of all, we appreciate our patrons for joining us on the Discord, where they really are a huge asset to the show in just being a community for us to bounce ideas off of, get suggestions of games. It's really a great online hang, and it's something that we really, really value about doing this show. So if you think that might be at all fun for you, please join us there. You can also find all the stuff for the show on shortgame.fm. That includes links to all the various different podcast platforms. Have you left a review for the show? Have you done it lately? Have you done it on every podcast platform? There's a real challenge for you. Do that. Those reviews really mean a lot to us. We do see them, we read them, but also they help surface the show to new audiences, and that's something that we really appreciate. We love doing IFComp. It does occasionally bring us new listeners. So we appreciate if you happen to be checking out the show because we're, doing the comp and you're curious about it there. So thank you so much. If you're a new listener, please join us, hang out, check out maybe the back catalog if there's any games in there that you're curious about. We try to keep our stuff evergreen. If you go back and listen to stuff, we keep all the old episodes up and available. And if you have old episodes that you're curious about that you want to check out, games that you've liked in the past, give them a listen. Most of those very, very old episodes, sound quality is a little worse. Maybe our opinions are a little more embarrassing, but we're standing by them. Check it out. You can find me on the internet at raygan.me. That's RAYGAN.me. And that's got links to all of my various different socials. I'm on Mastodon. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I don't post a whole lot on most of those, but you can reach me there. You can also find me on Discord there if you just want to add me and chat with me there. I don't mind people DMing me, at least yet. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me most places at Laura J. Nash. Lurk most commonly on Mastodon and Blue Sky.
And Shane, where can people find you?
These days I am most active on our Discord, but you can find me on Mastodon at Shane@bird.rodeo and on Threads at 8bitshane.
And listeners, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.